The Spoken Token is a proud member of the Pod Studio One podcast network.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into The Spoken Token. This is expansion number 7. I am going to be your host this time, Larry Neal, and we're going to go a little bit different this time. I'm going to give you a bit of a peek behind the curtain. What I want to do is just talk a little bit about some of the things that we do to get our podcast ready to go on and actually get it posted up and to get it sent out and broadcasted to everyone. Everything from on the hardware side, how we actually sit there and record it, and just a really high view look following through from the creation process all the way through to you guys getting an opportunity to listen to it. So one quick thing, I guess we'll start with when Alex and I are in the studio, when we are at Pod Studio One. Pod Studio One is a professional recording studio. So Carl is a real sound engineer and he has great equipment. And Alex and I get to show up and just sit down across from each other, and the microphones are set up. We plug in our headphones and we go to it. So obviously that is not something that is available to everyone. It's not even available to us at all times, depending on our personal schedules. And certainly when we started out, it wasn't available. So I'll be talking about that when we started out and how we now handle our remote. So when we're at Tennessee Game Days, for instance, or if we go down to Game Point Cafe, they're here in Nashville, Tennessee, or any place else that you hear us out and about. If we're setting up and doing a show, we use that same equipment that we started the show with. And that's what I want to sort of look at today and just kind of dive down into, like I said, again, really informally. So first things first, the hardware. I did want to record into a board. I wanted to work with the XLR format, and that's going to be the 3-prong male and female plug. That is the standard in the recording studio. I've done some work in the past singing, so I'm very familiar with the standard. Always very fascinated with audio. A lot to do with, in my formative years in my youth when I grew up. So I like being able to tweak the sound and work with the sound and turn the knobs and push the dials and everything else that we need to do. It's just something that's always been fascinating to me. So when we started out, I knew I wanted that type of input. I knew I wanted to work with XLR. So I purchased a Behringer Xenix 802U to use for USB. The USB on the interface on this board was also a must because I knew that my recording workstation or my audio workstation needed to be a digital one. So sometimes you may hear this referred to as a DAW. So that's D as in David, AW for digital audio workstation. The one that I go with, and the one that I'm using for this episode right now, is Audacity. And so we'll dive into that just a little bit now. Moving back to the studio for a moment, and or when Alex, when he does his pass, and Alex and I pretty much work as far as editing is concerned, we both touch every episode. Those two use the full Adobe suite, audio suite, which is fantastic software. After putting out for the after putting out for the physical board and the microphone, I needed my budget to be in the free neighborhood or as cheap as possible when it came to a digital audio workstation. So I'm very glad that option existed. And so I go with Audacity. So when you hear the recording from me, and like I said, this recording and pretty much every episode that I've edited, which is about all of them with very few exceptions, my work is done in Audacity. So they do the same thing, of course, obviously at different levels. Adobe has, more effects and a more different user interface, of course, than Audacity has. But basically the gist is they take the audio that you're speaking and they lay it out for you so that you can go back and do the scrubbing that you need to do, that you can change some things, add the sound effects. In our case, put the breaks in, cut in the music, let us do the voiceovers for the music, fly in other segments. So if we go out and we do record something, with our phones or with another, little small digital recorder, that's what your digital audio workstation lets you do. Audacity is a free option and is a good one. So it's one that you can use there. There are some others out there that are close to free, $60-$70. I think Reaper is another one that's out there that I've done a little looking into, haven't used it yet, but who knows, we may be switching to that. For now, I'm firmly in the Audacity camp, but you need a digital audio workstation so that you can process your sound. There's a free option out there for you. You don't necessarily have to go through a board. As of now, like I said, when you're USB, I'm running directly into the computer and going directly into Audacity. I like to use the XLR standard for our major shows, and as much as possible, it's just, again, it's a preference thing, what you like to work with. By all means, don't let the access to any of these things or the ability or the inability to obtain them and or work with them, don't let it stop you. The beautiful thing about this is there's so many ways around it. Once you go through and you make that first hurdle, which is, hey, I want to do a podcast. And once you know what you're going to talk about, once you do your research, once you get that show set up and you're ready to go with it, then of course it's really important. The sound is not an afterthought. Okay. It doesn't have to sound like it was done in a professional studio, but it does need to be clear, and it needs to be at a pleasant volume so that people can hear you talk. If you have music, if you're using music in it, you want to make sure that you've got some basic ideas, that you're not competing with the music when you're speaking. And it doesn't take a lot. You don't have to go and take a crash course in being an audio engineer. That leads me to the social media aspect of it. Get out there. There's a lot of good places on social media, a lot of good groups of podcasters. Always, and I'll be honest, if you're a fan of a particular show, it wouldn't hurt to send them an email or a request that's a little off topic from the show, asking them these types of things. And this is one of the reasons why I'm doing this one now, why I'm doing it in an expansion, is because I've gotten this from people that I know. And sometimes people that I don't know, they ask me, hey, you meet people, what do you like to do? I like to play board games. Oh, really? That's really cool. And I'll get around to that I have a podcast. I've had a few stop and say, okay, all of that's super cool, but you know what? I was wanting to do a podcast too. Man, can you give me some tips to get over these hurdles of getting it actually done, to recording a podcast, of getting it going? So that's one of the things that you can, if you listen to a podcast, send them an email and ask them, hey, what are some of the technical things that you guys do? For microphones, like I said, we use XLR on our board, on our Xenix board, and I'm using an AT2020 XLR microphone. It is a condenser mic, which is a particular type. Basically, it picks up audio from the front. It's not omnidirectional, meaning it picks up sounds from all sides. It's got a definite front and a definite back. I like the way my voice sounds on that. I like the directionality of it. There's a little bit of research you will need to do in terms of if you want to get involved in this and you don't have any idea. But honestly, guys, it doesn't take a lot. Just a few simple questions in Google will give you enough information for the most part in today's day and age, today's very digital age, actually, to start up a podcast and to get a podcast going. But again, we both use those type of microphones. So there's some other things with our board that allows us to do so. Those types of microphones require a little bit of extra power. My board is designed to deliver that to the two main XLR inputs, which is exactly what we have. We can listen and monitor ourselves real time with headphones when we're doing the recording. I have hardware control, so I've got knobs on the board for each of our channels. We're each in a channel, and we each get an opportunity I can turn this up or down. Overall volume, I can do compression live on the spot, hardware based. It's right there on the board. I can also, of course, do some equalizations. So can add highs or subtract highs, and the same thing with lows and mids, just until, we sound the way that we like. And that's just something that I enjoy. I like to sit there and listen, do a mic test, and then we play it back, and, I can get feedback right away. Hey, do you like how you sound? Or if I don't like the way I sound, that's something else that I enjoy doing. And I wanted to do something that I enjoy. Since I knew I was going to be in this for the long haul in terms of doing podcasts, I wanted to enjoy every aspect of it, not just the getting to go to my game collection and study and pick up games and play games so that we could come back and bring that information to you guys and talk about it, but also the physical aspect of it. Because again, when we started, the plan was, listen, we're going to own the equipment that we need, and it'll be very modest, but the two of us can do our show. So that was the start on that. As far as hosting is concerned, you will need a host for your podcast. I go with Libsyn. There are tons of them out there. The Spoken Token goes through Libsyn. A host is basically a place where when you finish your show and you upload it to them, you put everything in it. You've got your intro and your outro and your music and all your content. And then this is a place where you can build your feed out, and they'll build your feed and they'll send it all these different places. So for me, Libsyn sends it everywhere that we are. So they send it over to iTunes. They send it to Google. We have our own webpage through them. That's a part of their service. Of course, the feed goes there. We've signed up for quite a few other places trying to get SoundCloud worked out. We're doing some things on YouTube. Literally, I go and I upload our podcast once. I had to pre-build these things at least once in the setup time, but then every new episode, when we go in and we set it up, we send it out, Libsyn takes care of it for us. You need to do the hosting as well. That's a recurring cost. And that's another reason why I wanted to make sure that my digital audio workstation was absolutely going to be free. So that's why Audacity really worked well for me. Once you have this portion of it figured out, which again, there are so many options out there, then go for it. Obviously the bigger part, or the biggest part of your podcast, is going to be, what is the podcast about? What are you talking about? How are you going to do your research? The format that the show is going to be in. But honestly, just as important is going to be the sound. Again, does not have to be a professional commercial production, but you want your people to be able to hear it. They can't see you in a podcast, obviously, so being able to hear you clearly is a must, but there's so many ways to make sure that you can go about that. I just wanted to share a little bit of what we do here. Our setup, again, is nothing special. We use the small little board from Behringer. I've got my Audio-Technica mic. Alex also uses a condenser microphone. I'm not sure the name brand of his microphone. We plug those guys into the board. We both had computers. Again, when I'm using Audacity to do the edits, or he is going to be using Adobe for the same reason, we plug them up and we get going. Now that's, again, going to be the physical piece. We'll do some more peeks behind the curtain, and we'll get more into the content piece of it later. But I just wanted to cover this one because this one was early on for me. It forced me to move back when we started the show because I kind of let this be a bit of a hurdle for me. Just me personally, I want to have some research done. I want to understand and know what I'm getting into. And I was a bit overwhelmed with all of the choices when I got started. So I'd hoped that hopefully this rather will be helpful maybe to some of you to say, hey, listen, there are a lot of different ways you can go about it. We use USB microphones I do some incidentals. We'll do intros, sometimes outros. I'm actually doing my expansions with the USB microphones. I don't pull out the whole kit because those you can just plug right into the computer, go right into your workstation, and bam, there you go. And you're hearing the results of that as we speak. There are so many different options. I just want to say, if you're inspired to do a podcast, by all means, go out there and do it. Once you get everything laid out, how you want to do it, just know that this particular piece, the technical piece, there are so many options out there and so many people willing to help you to get those right where you need them to be so that they line up perfectly for you and your show so that you can go and create and communicate and speak to your audience. So again, like I said, we will revisit this topic and we'll do maybe some different facets of it, but I will get out of your way and get you back to your day. Thank you for spending some time with me. And as always, this is Larry Neal for The Spoken Token, saying both keep playing and keep communicating.
This has been the Spoken Token Podcast. If you'd like to interact with us, please contact us through email at thespokentokenpodcast@gmail.com, on Instagram at The Spoken Token Podcast, on Twitter at The Spoken Token, or on Facebook at The Spoken Token Podcast. And you can reach us through our BGG Guild, number 2656.
You are listening to a Pod Studio One Podcast Network podcast. Find more great podcasts at www.podstudio1.com.